like to learn how to develop those invisible boundaries that you often experience when you are communicating with other leaders? Perhaps you are a leader and you know that you need to work on developing those invisible boundaries so that people are able to understand them and respect them as you are going into 2026. This is the perfect video for you. We're going to talk about how to set boundaries like a leader. And I'm going to share with you why, when you communicate with other leaders, there is this invisible boundary that you sense, you feel it, but you just don't see it. I'm going to share with you some strategies that will help you be able to start developing this as a leader. Now, we're stepping into 2026, and if you're watching this portion of the video, you are watching the replay, and I'm glad that you are spending a few moments out of your day with me today. I want to first say Happy New Year to you. This is an amazing year. This is the 31st. We're at New Year's Eve right now, and I'm really glad to be able to spend a few moments out of your day with you before this wonderful, wonderful event that's going to be happening next year. So I'm really excited for you. And if you have any questions specifically as it relates to being able to either communicate at a higher level, coming up with a strategy for 2026, or maybe you're struggling a bit, then put something in the comments below. I'll be happy to give you some insight and do a video just for you. Now, I do want to say that the audience I work with specifically are women in leadership in terms of my executive coaching and consulting practice. However, I have a lot of people that are subscribed to my channel that are men in leadership and individuals that are not quite leaders just yet. So I'm really glad that you all are here, and I appreciate your support. And ask me any questions. I'm here to support you regardless of where you are on your journey. So I want to say hello to Zohab Saqib. Hello, Zohab. Welcome back. Welcome back. How you doing today? Zohab says, hey, I am first. You are, and I appreciate you being here. There's typically a point in time for those of you who are watching the replay when the YouTube algorithm will bring people into the conversation. Therefore, give me just a few moments so we can say hello to everybody, and then we'll go ahead and start talking about some strategies to help you be able to set those boundaries like a leader. So if you're watching now, feel free to let me know where you are joining from and what questions do you have about setting boundaries in 2026. That's what we're talking about today. I'm going to help you set boundaries like a leader. If you are a leader, then you absolutely want to learn how to set these boundaries. As I mentioned at the very beginning of the video, leaders tend to have this invisible boundary around them. You do not see the boundary physically, but you feel a boundary that's there. You feel like there's just a certain line that you should not cross. Now, have you ever struggled with this? Have you ever struggled with setting that boundary? Because we're going to talk about why leaders are able to do this. One of the things that leaders tend to do when they are trying to set those boundaries is something that's so incredibly important. Leaders tend to have of their own self-worth. Now, this may sound a bit contrary to what you're thinking about as it relates to setting boundaries, but let's think about it. Let's dive into it a bit. Leaders know what they're worth. They know what their time is worth. They know what their energy is worth, and etc. And if you are at a point in your life where you're struggling with boundaries, you feel like maybe people are taking advantage of you or perhaps giving you a hard time, then we want to dive deep into what's going on specifically with your boundaries, and how can we help you to have that very heightened sense of self-worth as it relates to you and your journey and what you're planning on doing for 2026. Now, before I go into this a bit more, I want to know from those of you who are watching, what are your plans for 2026? What are you going to be working on this year? What are some boundaries that you feel like you have not been able to do very well in this past year in 2025? What are some boundaries that you feel like you need to set in 2026? Let's talk about it. Because many times what happens to individuals is when they are in these different types of settings and etc., they don't take that time to understand what are their boundaries and specifically what is it that they are struggling with. And what happens oftentimes in those settings is that they start working, or they're in their careers and their roles and etc., and then they decide that, oh, I just gotta be working, I need to just do work. but they don't take the time to really think about, well, what is it specifically that they need to really work on? This is what I do not want you all to struggle with as it relates to this upcoming year. So Lonnie Burton 3293 says hello. Hello, Lonnie. Welcome back. I know you've been here before, so I appreciate you being here and stopping by to say hello today. Let me know what part of the big, beautiful world you all are joining from today, and what are some boundaries that you're trying in 2026 to help you go to that next level in your careers. As I mentioned at the beginning, leaders tend to have this invisible boundary. We feel it, we don't see it, but we know that there's something there. If you've ever experienced that, let me know in the comments below. And I'm going to share with you how leaders are able to set these type of boundaries that you can feel it, but you don't actually see it. So we're going to talk about that. As I mentioned, the very first strategy I would share with you to help you do this is to have a very heightened sense of your self-worth. As I mentioned, leaders know their self-worth. And if this is something that you're struggling with and you happen to be in my audience that I provide executive coaching and consulting services to that are women in leadership, then let me know. Let's have a strategy session and let's talk about it. But this is something that all leaders know, regardless of gender. They know what their worth is. And if you're struggling with that, that's really the first place you want to start. If you're having a hard time with boundaries, or you're struggling with it, you feel like people are taking advantage of you or giving you a hard time, let's think about your worth. What are you worth? What is your time worth, and etc. Now, I mentioned on several of my videos this month, in December specifically, I've been heavily focusing in on boundaries. And I want to reflect back to you really quickly, just to give you something to work with. For this upcoming year, there's 5 categories of boundaries that you may want to consider working on. There's a lot of other boundaries, but I'm focusing more on the professional side of your career and leadership and etc. But those boundaries include your time boundary, your money boundary, your energy boundary, your personal boundary, and your professional boundary. Think about each one of these categories of boundaries in terms of what specifically you may need to do to help develop them. I've found as an executive coach that many people truly do struggle with completing their goals or accomplishing those very huge milestones they're trying to do in their career because there's some boundary that they have not been able to fully set. And this is the reason why I encourage you to really think about those 5 type of boundaries, because they will help you be able to start developing, well, do I need to work on my time boundary, my money boundary, my energy boundary, my personal boundary, or my professional boundary? Which one of these boundaries is potentially holding me back from being able to go to that next level in my career? So think about that. Now, as I mentioned, leaders have a very high sense of their self-worth. How do you develop that? That's the next question. If you are a leader and you know you haven't developed that invisible boundary, as I say, how do you develop your self-worth? Well, one way you can do it, there's 2 really good ways to develop your self-worth. One is to spend some quiet time with yourself, whether you get a paper or a pen or some type of way that you reflect on yourself to determine, what am I worth as it relates to my time? What am I worth as it relates to my energy and etc. And if you're watching this video or subscribe to my channel, then these levels of self-worth should be pretty high, because you know I know you all are amazing leaders. My titles are very specific to cater to a certain type of individual that is truly exceptional, and I know you are that person. So that's one way, is have your own private time, have your own private reflection in terms of what is my self-worth? What do I value about myself? What is important for me? What boundaries do I need to have set so that I'm able to protect myself? These are executive coaching questions that I provide to my clients in a one-on-one or a group setting. Now, I mentioned to you there's 2 ways for you to help develop your self-worth. The first way is your own self-reflection, thinking about those questions I mentioned to you. Now, the other way for you to develop your self-worth is to invest in a coach. So I am an executive coach, and why do I say that? Because when you're working with someone that is a certified coach that has done training to help individuals go to that next level, we are trained in a specific way to help you to accelerate your growth faster than you would by yourself. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean things are going to change tomorrow, but working with a coach can truly change your life. It's changed my life personally. I have my own coaches that I work with, but investing in getting some support to really help you dive deep is important. There's only but so much reflection you can do on your own until you reach a point where you hit a wall and you're just not able to move forward as much as you'd like to. This is exactly why you want to make sure that you're in a setting where you're getting that very structured support to help you truly go to that next level. Working with a coach can help you uncover obstacles and challenges that you simply did not know that you had. You will be surprised and amazed by those settings. Now, if you're a woman in leadership, feel free to reach out to me. We can talk a little bit more about that. But those are two ways to help you start developing your sense of self-worth. As I mentioned, when leaders have that type of invisible boundary, they have a very heightened sense of their self-worth. They truly do. Now, so we know there's that invisible boundary. So as I mentioned, I'm sharing with you, how do you develop it? Heightened sense of self-worth, number one. Number two, leaders clearly know what boundaries they need to uphold at all times. Have you ever been in a situation where you've talked to someone and you've set boundaries with them as a leader, or maybe you're not in a leadership role specifically just yet, but you found that they have tried to cross your boundaries? Has it happened to you before? Have you had your boundaries crossed before? I have. And if you have, definitely put that in the comments below, because this is something that happens often. Now, leaders, they know what their boundaries are. They have a very clear understanding as to this boundary cannot be crossed, this boundary cannot be crossed either. Therefore, what do they do to consistently showcase this boundary to other people when it is being crossed? Leaders are able to respond quickly, very, very quickly, as it relates to those boundaries when they are crossed. Now, I talked about this yesterday in a live, and I talked about how to, if your boundaries have been crossed, do this. There's 2 live videos where I talk about that. So if you want some more insight on it, feel free to take a look at the live videos from yesterday in terms of what do you do when your boundaries have been crossed. This is a great place for you to start. But I want to share with you that leaders consistently uphold the boundaries. Think of them as individuals who are protecting something. They're protecting their country, they're protecting their gate, they're protecting their house. They are always ready to defend those boundaries when someone tries to cross them. Therefore, when you approach a leader and a leader is maybe in a situation where someone is crossing a boundary, you immediately feel that that boundary has just been defended. And I'm sharing this with you because I know there's that invisible boundary that's there, and this is how you develop it. You have to know what your boundaries are and be very clear about what your boundaries are, especially as you're going into 2026. This is a wonderful year for everyone. Of course, this is a new year. There's wonderful things that will happen. There's challenges that will happen. But setting your boundaries is something that you always want to be able to uphold. Why? Because individuals that do not set their boundaries, they tend to struggle quite a bit. And there's a lot of things that happen in life. They become very disgruntled. They're very unhappy. And I simply don't want that to happen to you. I want you to be in a very empowered state where you are equipped to handle those very under pressure like situations when they come up, so that you feel more confident in terms of how you are able to manage your boundaries and make sure that people do not cross them when they're trying to. So for those of you who are joining, welcome. Glad you're here today. And let me know if you've ever struggled with boundaries and what part of the Big Beautiful World are you all joining from today. Let me know. I appreciate you being here this morning. Now, we've talked about a couple ways, a couple strategies that leaders use to help them set boundaries. Your self-worth is important. Being able to consistently uphold your boundaries is critically important as well. Now let's go into the next strategy I want to share with you as it relates to how leaders are able to set these boundaries and keep them. Another strategy that leaders use to set their boundaries is to control their facial expressions. You may be wondering, well, what does that have to do with setting boundaries? I thought I was just supposed to say something or do something. Well, you are, but your facial expressions will tell so much more sometimes than what you actually say. So let me give you an example. When you are communicating with someone, and let's say both of you are smiling, you're laughing, and etc., if someone's facial expression suddenly goes from a smile to a frown, you automatically feel like, whoa, something's happening here. What is going on? This is the reason why leaders can control their facial expressions. They are able to turn it on, turn it off quickly. You may be in a situation where you're saying hello to someone, and I want to say hello to Apex Noob General 6877. Welcome back, friend. How you doing today? And you may be in a conversation with someone, and they change. Leaders will do that. If they feel like their boundaries are being crossed, they have to let you know in a physical sense, don't go there. You're crossing the boundary. This is what leaders do to create that very invisible type of boundary. So Apex Noob General 6877 says, "Hi, beautiful. You are doing live while driving." Yes, I do my lives while I am driving. I am being safe. Yes, I do my lives typically Tuesday through Friday in the morning on my commute, and then in the evenings I'm live as well. But this week will be a little bit different because I'm going live today and most likely later this evening, and then I will be off for the next couple of days just because it's the holiday here and it's the new year. So yes, I am doing my live while I'm driving, but I'm glad to see you back here again. So we've talked about a couple of strategies that will help you be able to navigate how to set boundaries like a leader. Now, I want to know from you, which of these strategies were your favorite strategies? Which strategy do you know that you need to work on and you may need to think about in terms of how you want to develop that strategy? Let me know in the comments below. So we've shared a couple strategies with you so far. As a recap, the first strategy is to develop a heightened sense of self-worth. If you're trying to set your boundaries as a leader, this is so critically important. You will not be able to set your boundaries properly if you don't value yourself. If you're struggling with this and you happen to be a woman in leadership, reach out to me for a strategy session so we can talk about it and help you not to struggle with this as you are going into 2026. A lot of times, many people struggle with boundaries, but I know women in leadership tend to struggle with them as well. Many of us have been in different types of leadership roles over the years, and we're just transitioning into some of those higher level roles as CEOs, VPs, senior VPs, directors, managers, business owners, doctors, lawyers, and I could go on and on and on. So sometimes we struggle because we're just getting into these fields and we're trying to balance of being accommodating but advancing in our career. But boundaries are really the most important way for you to be able to set them. So that's the first thing I want to mention to you. Self-worth is important. Second is to uphold your boundaries consistently. This is critically important as you are trying to develop your boundaries like a leader. And then your facial expressions in terms of how you showcase your expressions emotionally with your eyes and with your lips and etc. is very, very, very important to uphold your boundaries. Now, I do have several videos here on my live channel that talk about body language, facial expressions, tone of voice, and etc. And this is something that you can spend some time on my live tab and take a look at them. There's a lot of great videos that will help you start to learn how to master those skills specifically. But in this video, I will not be going into a lot of detail on that because I have a lot of videos that talk about that. Look for videos that talk about tone of voice, that talk about eye contact. Listen out for my cowboy analogy. That is my analogy that I have as it relates to maintaining eye contact and etc. All of those type of strategies will help you to set those boundaries like a leader. You have to control your facial expressions. And my fourth and final strategy I want to share with you, and hello to those of you who have joined today. Let me know what part of Big Beautiful World you are joining from, and have you ever struggled with setting boundaries? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it for the next few minutes. The fourth strategy I want to share with you to set boundaries like a leader is to manage your tone of voice. Now, we alluded to this just a few moments ago when we were talking about controlling your facial expressions. Now, your tone of voice is very, very important when you're trying to set boundaries. I talk a lot more about this and discuss it more in detail in my live yesterday, but I'm going to touch on it just briefly. For those of you who are joining, the live yesterday talked about if someone crosses your boundaries, do this. There's 2 lives that talk about that. I would highly recommend for you to look at those on the live tab, because that will give you more strategy in terms of what exactly do you say in those situations. But today, generally speaking, leaders can set boundaries because they manage their tone of voice. They know when to elevate their voice and they know when to lower their voice very, very quickly when someone is in a position where they are crossing a boundary specifically with them. Let me give you an example. When you have someone and you are in a leadership role, when you have someone that you have perhaps shared a boundary with, you've spoken with them about a boundary many, many times before, and you notice that they are not acknowledging your boundary, or they keep disregarding your boundary, and etc., when you have a conversation with them, your tone of voice has to be at a different depth than what it was before. Why is that? Because if you normally speak in a more low type of tone of voice, then you may have to elevate your voice. Or if you speak in a way that is maybe a bit higher, maybe have a higher octave type of voice, then you have to be in a setting where you are able to lower your voice. The individual that you're communicating with that might be disregarding your boundaries or not acknowledging your boundaries, they have to know something is different about this conversation they're having with me. If you speak to someone in the same way, the same tone of voice that you do normally, they will not know that there is a difference, and they will just continue to disregard your boundary. That is the reason why when you're in those situations, you have to sound more affirmative, more direct, and very, very concise. Many people struggle with speaking concisely. They don't know how to do it. They're not quite sure what to do. This is my expertise. I help my clients to learn how to speak more concisely. But when you're in those situations, your tone of voice matters. And your tone of voice should be different, regardless of what your baseline. I talk about that in several videos on my channel. You have to know what your baseline is specifically as it relates to how you communicate. That's the first place to start. But once you know your baseline, then in terms of changing your tone of voice when someone is giving you some challenges as it relates to your boundary, you will be able to know, okay, my baseline tone of voice is this. If I know that someone is disregarding a boundary and I need to project myself in a more serious way, then I need to either elevate my voice or I need to lower my voice. It just depends. Now, as I mentioned, when you're interacting with leaders, and let me know if you've ever experienced this before, but when you're interacting with leaders, you do have a sense that there is this invisible boundary if this leader has done a very, very good job protecting their boundaries. And I have shared with you over 20 years worth of mistakes I've made, guidance, expertise that I have developed working as a C-suite executive, as a manager, as a director. I have been on the news, I've been on the cover of a magazine cover, and I've interacted with congressional leaders. I'm sharing this with you because I know many people want to be able to set these boundaries, and they struggle with them, especially as leaders and especially as women in leadership. And I want to make sure that you all are not struggling with these boundaries as we are navigating into 2026. Now, if you like this information and it's helped you in any way, feel free to like this video. I appreciate those of you who have liked it already. And feel free to just let me know what other areas I can support you in as it relates to enhancing and developing your boundaries. I know this is something people struggle with, and if you're in my direct audience I provide services to that are women in leadership, then feel free to reach out to me in the strategy session in the description below. Let's make sure you're starting 2026 on the right foot so that you can accomplish all the amazing things you're trying to do. If you're not in the audience that I work with directly, you're welcome to put some comments here. I will still provide you with as much support as I can. Here via YouTube, I will do a video just for you based on a topic that you have. Just let me know how I can support you as you are trying to elevate those boundaries. I will see you all in the video this evening if you join. If not, I'm wishing you a very, very happy and amazing new year, and I will see you all in the new year very soon. Bye for now.